So here we are, Avengers Endgame, directed by the Russo brothers, written by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely. Probably the most anticipated movie of this entire year, alongside Star Wars. But yeah, this film is just being hyped up to a ridiculous level, and of course stars everyone that we have met pretty much in the MCU up to this point, and it follows on immediately after the events of Infinity War, where we have our remaining heroes. After Thanos won and wiped out half of all humanity, the team have to devise a plan to avenge the fallen and defeat Thanos once and for all. Now, I do want to give a quick heads up, this review is completely spoiler free. Do not worry if you have not seen this movie or you're planning to do so in the near future. This will have no spoilers in it whatsoever, so you are free to watch this review if you have not seen the film. So yeah, let's discuss Avengers Endgame. So the funny story with this film is I've actually seen this twice within 24 hours of it coming out here in the UK, because I went to the midnight screening, watched it then. I was originally meant to watch it back to back with Infinity War, but I didn't make the Infinity War screening because I had a terrible headache. The film was that good when on my first viewing it actually cured my headache. I went to bed and then got up, and then around about midday today I was like, do you know what? I want to watch the film again. So I went down, I watched the film for a second time. I've literally had no sleep, but I do not care. I wanted to get this review out, and after seeing it twice, I feel like I'm now really in a good mind place and mindset to finally review this movie. So yeah, let's discuss it. So the first positive I have with this movie are the performances. The performances are just incredible, as they always are in all of the Marvel movies, but in here, very much so, because of how much more human and character driven this film is compared to Infinity War. And I think the two performances that really stood out to me, and they might seem like obvious ones, but for me it had to be Chris Evans as Captain America and Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. They were just so good in this movie because it very much focused on the two of them and their relationship. They were really the heart and soul of this entire film. They didn't meet each other in Infinity War. There's obviously a lot of feelings between the two of them, of course, with what happened in Civil War, with them completely losing trust and faith in one another. And I thought the choice to focus this movie almost very much so on them was by far the correct decision. We got some incredible moments between the two of them out of it. And again, without going into too much detail for the fear of spoilers, I just thought that both of them were fantastic, and what they go through in this entire movie was just brilliant. And Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. just absolutely killed it, but everybody else does as well in the film. They were all fantastic as well. Everybody gets some really good moments to shine, but for me, those two were just the absolute standouts in this entire film. They just did such a phenomenal job with what they were given. I have to say as well also, I thought Captain Marvel in this was far better than she was in her origin film, because everybody knows that I was not a fan of Captain Marvel herself as a character in her standalone film. Here, I thought she was way better done. This was the Captain Marvel I wanted to see 2 months ago in her origin film, and I'm happy that, here she was a lot better. Other people I want to mention as well, Thor gets some good stuff in this film. Hawkeye, who of course we didn't see in Infinity War, he gets some really cool scenes in here as well, as does Black Widow, and of course Hulk just does as well. Hulk's just really, really good in this movie. But yeah, everybody else is great, but for me it was just that Captain America and Iron Man, they just really stood out to me in this movie. And yeah, everybody was just absolutely fantastic. The direction as well by the Russo brothers is another thing that I have to commend, because they very much kept the same tone that they had in Infinity War, where everything can be lighthearted and be adventurous, but it also knows when to be serious when it needs to be. And I'd say this is perfected even more so in this movie, because this is a very downbeat movie, but it still knows when to have that bit of levity and heart within it. And I thought that was just so well done, because the balance of the two is just perfect. They know how to do this to an absolute T. With what they did with the Winter Soldier and Civil War and Infinity War, and here, I think this is their best film complete, definitely in terms of direction and just in terms of them balancing those two together. For me, they are the best directors in the MCU. I appreciate what Jon Favreau did with Iron Man and what Joss Whedon did with the Avengers, but for me, the Russo brothers, they're just on a completely different level right now, and they're some of the best directors, I honestly think, working today. The emotion as well of this film was also just so incredibly noticeable and just so brilliant. The entire story for this film, the screenplay by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, is just fantastic, because it's very much more character driven than Infinity War. Infinity War was very much the big epic scale movie. This is very much more so, a character-driven film. It's got way more interactions with the characters that we've come to know for the past 11 years, which I kind of did expect given the 3-hour runtime. They couldn't just do action the entire way through, but the amount of amazing character moments with just characters reflecting on the past was just so brilliant, and it got me so emotional because I'm emotionally invested in these characters, and the way that the script uses this is just phenomenal. There are numerous times in the movie where I'm feeling all these emotions for these characters because they just know how to play on it, and it's just brilliant. The action here as well, when we do get it, is absolutely fantastic. There are numerous action sequences in this film, all of which I thought were really cool. I was never bored in one of them at all. They always found a way to be really interesting and fun and vibrant, but also have, of course, that more serious take to them when they were necessary. The ending action sequence is just wow. Just wow. I won't spoil anything, but it's just, yeah, mind was officially blown when we got to the action sequence in the third act. My mind was just completely shattered into a million pieces, and yeah, it was absolutely awesome to see. I very much enjoyed myself, as did my entire theatre for both screenings of this film. It was an absolute joy to watch, and it was just a really nice way to tie off all the respective acts of the film. There's very much like an action sequence for the end of every act of the film, and for me, I just loved every single moment of it. And the final action sequence, again, just wow. And the way this film also wraps up everything we've come to see, every plot thread that was maybe left a little bit dangled or completely untouched or unfinished from the previous films. Most, from what I can remember, most of them get their conclusion here, and it's done in such a brilliant way. I thought a lot of the ways that they paid homage to the previous films as well was also really cool, and just a lot of the fan service moments, I think, for me, were so well intertwined with what was happening on screen. It didn't feel forced, it felt natural, it felt earned, because I've seen a few people criticize the film for like overdoing fan service, but for me, I didn't feel it was overdone. This is the end of a huge saga of this entire MCU, and so for me, it felt earned for them to be able to have those moments of fan service and to have them in there. And when they're there, my god, they're awesome. It was just a joy to watch, and it was just so nice to have the filmmakers just have a little bit of fun in that regard, calling back to certain moments, paying off certain story arcs. It's done in such a fantastic way, and even though it's of course ending these story arcs, it doesn't feel like the end completely. It kind of feels like the beginning of a new era, which I think is the best way that they could have gone about this, to show that yes, these things might be coming to an end, but we've got these other things that are only just beginning. And I've really enjoyed that with how they tackled that aspect of the film, making sure that people are aware that the MCU isn't ending anytime soon. There is still a lot more life left to come out of the cinematic universe. And also the pacing, for me, actually I did not have a problem with. I thought the pacing throughout this entire film was actually very good, because of course when you have a film that gets to the runtime of 3 hours, there's always the question of, will the film drag in places? But for me, I think Infinity War did a phenomenal job of remaining consistently engaging throughout that entire runtime. Even when there's moments that were slow and moments that didn't necessarily have a lot of action, I was still incredibly invested in it. And to be honest with you, on both times when I sat there in the screening, it didn't feel like 3 hours. The 3 hours honestly went by fairly quickly. I never had a time when I was glancing at my watch because I was bored with what was happening on screen. I was always engaged. I was never bored. And so for me, the pacing wasn't a problem, because again, another problem I've seen some people say with the film is that they felt the first hour was a little bit slow. But for me, I didn't have that problem. I didn't think it was slow. I thought it was very well paced with the way it works and what ultimately happens. I thought was really good, and the pacing was just fantastic. And it proves that superhero films don't have to abide by this, supposed 2-hour rule. You can make a film that is 3 hours long and still have it be engaging the entire way through. And Endgame for me is absolute proof of this, because I was engaged throughout the entire way through. My fellow cinema goers during my 2 screenings were the exact same way. So I really can't say I was bored with this movie. I thought the runtime was completely justifiable, and credit to the Russo brothers for having the faith to make this movie 3 hours long, because they absolutely nailed it. And in terms of negatives, I really don't have any. I'm being genuinely serious. I can't really think of any massive standout negatives with this entire movie. There is one minor nitpick that I have with this film, but it is the kind of nitpick that I'm willing to overlook because of how phenomenal everything else is. And I also can't really go too in depth with it in this review because it is a spoiler for the film. The only real way that I can describe it is there are certain elements of the film that I wish had been a little bit better explained. Some things that didn't necessarily make a lot of sense to me personally. I wish I had a bit more clarity on. But then again, the reason I count it as a nitpick is because I didn't feel like it was the focus of said scenes. The movie didn't make it such a humongous deal that it was like it demanded an answer. I think it was just, for me, it was more of a personal preference rather than a major criticism against the film. Hence why I class it as a nitpick. I don't personally see it as a massive problem. When you put that into comparison with everything else about this movie, it is so minuscule that for me I can just honestly overlook it because it just holds no kind of value or merit to it whatsoever for me personally. So other than that, this for me, and I'm going to say this now and people will tell me I'm fanboying, I'm not, I've seen the movie twice. This is easily the best Avengers movie for me personally, and I'd go as far as to say I would easily put it in my top 5 MCU films, maybe even top 3. It's genuinely that fantastic. It is a phenomenal send-off to this entire Infinity Saga of the MCU. It is one of the best superhero movies for me I've seen in the last 10 years. It's the best movie I've seen this year. It's going to take something for, in terms of scale-wise and emotional-wise, in the MCU to top this for me personally. So my final score for Avengers Endgame is going to be a 10 out of 10. Yep, I said it. I said Avengers Endgame is a 10 out of 10. I just can't give it any less because I generally didn't have a problem with the film. There was nothing for me that I felt was bad. It was just such a experience, and that's really the only word I can kind of use to describe it, really. Like, it was just an experience. And so, because I just couldn't think of anything, like I say, other than that one minor nitpick that for me, like, could say, alright, it's not a 10 out of 10. I was just so invested with the entire thing, and I implore anybody who's watching this, who for some weird reason has not booked their tickets for this film, to watch it. I generally didn't have a problem with the film. It is a phenomenal feat in superhero storytelling, and it's, like I said earlier, it's going to take some topping to beat this film when it comes to just emotion and scale, and I just can't wait to see what Marvel has got planned for the next 10 years of the MCU, because this was just such a phenomenal way to cap off this first era of phase of films, and they did it in the absolute best way possible. So that brings a close to my review for Avengers Endgame. I want to thank you all very much for watching this video. Again, I tried my best to evade any kind of spoilers whatever possible, because obviously I respect that people still haven't seen the movie. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It is absolutely phenomenal. Again, thank you all for watching the video. Make sure you subscribe to this channel if you are new, and also stick around because I might be doing a spoiler review of this film. Depends on how I feel about it, but I definitely have some things I want to go more in depth in without having to be held back by spoilers. So I'll see you all for then, or if not then, the next video. Goodbye.